The Miami Dolphins 2024 NFL schedule is here. We are reacting to it now on Locked on Dolphins.
You are Locked on Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked on Dolphins. It is your team every day and sometimes twice a day. It is our second half of a doubleheader here on Wednesday, May 15th, 2024. I want to thank you guys for checking out Locked on Dolphins. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked on Dolphins, co-host of Locked on NFL Scouting, and a tip of the cap to our everydayers, because it is your team every day. And today is a special day. It's schedule release day. So we're going to read through the Dolphins' full schedule here and then break it out into quarters of the season and just react. First knee-jerk reactions to the Dolphins' schedule for the 2024 NFL season. Miami's first block of games, the first quarter of the season. They have 3 home games in 5 contests before a Week 6 bye. Home against Jacksonville. That was rumored as early on Wednesday morning, maybe as recently as Thursday or Tuesday night. Week 2, Thursday night football, home against the Buffalo Bills. Week 3, with a little bit of extra rest, your first cross-country road trip, the Seattle Seahawks. You are in Seattle in Week 3. Week 4, back home for a rematch in primetime against the Tennessee Titans on Monday Night Football. And Week 5, at New England, a cold weather divisional rival, done early in the season before a Week 6 bye. Coming out of that Week 6 bye, the Dolphins face the Indianapolis Colts on the road. Week 8, they have the Arizona Cardinals at home. Week 9, at the Buffalo Bills. And finishing the second quarter of the season, the second of the West Coast trips, a Monday Night Football trip to LA to play the Los Angeles Rams. That's the first 9 games of the season. The Dolphins start the third quarter of the 2024 NFL season with 2 home games against the Las Vegas Raiders and the New England Patriots before a Thanksgiving Day short week against the Green Bay Packers. And the fourth game in that quarter of the season, home against the New York Jets in Week 14. Weeks 15 through 18 is, at least at this point in time, a challenging fourth quarter, a challenge that I personally welcome for this football team. At Houston, Week 15. Week 16, home against the San Francisco 49ers. Week 17, at the Cleveland Browns on Sunday Night Football. And Week 18, at the New York Jets to close the 2024 NFL regular season. That's the schedule. Let's talk about it in quarters, starting with the first quarter, where we did on the show earlier today, talked about a 7-9 disadvantage of home games versus road games this season, or 8-9. We already knew where one of them was, which is why we talked about 7 unknowns. To start 3 out of 4 at home is nice for September. I certainly wish 2 out of the 3 kicks at home against Buffalo and Tennessee weren't primetime kickoff games. You get 1 kickoff at 1 o'clock in September, and it's against another Florida team, so that's a little lame. But Jacksonville, Buffalo, Tennessee at home with Seattle at Week 3, your first cross-country trip. That's plus at New England as the 5th game. Obviously, there's 17 games, so I can't do 4 quarters of 4. We did our first quarter with 5. I like the draws here. I like catching Buffalo early at home. I like having extra rest on either side of the Seattle game. You have a Thursday night game, so you have a couple extra days in front of the Seattle game. And then you have an extra day of rest coming home from the West Coast trip to play the Tennessee Titans on Monday Night Football. That is kind of the first place that my mind goes with this first block of games. Jacksonville, looking to rebound, should be a challenging game. Buffalo, obviously, they're a team that has had a lot of success against Miami. At Seattle, I think that's a team that has a lot of new. There's a new coach in that block, just like Tennessee, a new coach, New England, a new coach. A lot of changes organizationally for those three franchises. And I think that makes them favorable draws for Miami to take in the first quarter of the season. A week 6 bye to start the second quarter of the season, probably 2 weeks earlier than you ideally would have liked, right? Because now you're facing a big home stretch of games. You got 12 games to finish after the bye. And the split is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 road games and 5 home games in that split. So it's a little imposing to know you'll have that much week-to-week travel. Now, I will say, credit to the schedule, there's only one set of back-to-back road games. So that is kind of where you find a little bit of peace. And one of those you have an extra day of rest for, which is the West Coast trip to LA in that second quarter of the season. So out of the bye week to catch the Indianapolis Colts. We talked about that on the wish list based on the home away disparity. If you were going to capitalize on the bye week to catch a road team out of it to kind of reset yourself, I'll take that. And Indianapolis as a team, I guess the bummer there is they are a Midwest road game, potential cold weather opponent. That's not a cold weather opponent, but you get them out of the way early. When if you told me you could flip-flop Indianapolis and Cleveland in this schedule, I think I would gladly do that. But you get Indianapolis before a home tilt against Arizona. I think the thing that stands out the most to me about the Arizona game is this is your second home 1 o'clock kickoff of the season. Your second home kickoff of the season comes on October 27th. Now, you have home games in here. They're just primetime. And part of this is the price you pay for being a competitive team and being an entertaining team. You are going to be on an elevated platform. You're going to be in more primetime slots. You're going to have more call-ups. So that's the nature of the beast of being a competitive team. And then you have this very challenging close, the final 2 weeks of quarter 2 at Buffalo and at LA Rams. We'll talk a little bit more about those dynamics in addition to getting into the deeper portions of this schedule up next here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. So make sure you stick with us. It is winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count with FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. I like getting Buffalo out of the way. You're done with Buffalo by November 3rd. All of those boxes will be checked. You'll have all the clarity on if you took care of business in a way that you needed to in order to kind of change the landscape of your divisional outlook, right? Because as things currently stand, you should expect to go 0.5 and 1.5 against the Bills in any given year. It's just the wins have not been there for you. But to get them done twice in the first half of the season should allow you to shift your focus towards you got to play the Patriots. You got to play the Jets twice starting in December. You played the Jets twice late in the year last year. I think there's some dynamics with that should be helpful. And then you get the Rams. And the other thing that we talked about on the wish list was, can you get some favorable breaks if you're not going to get the West Coast trips back to back? And that is indeed what the Dolphins end up getting. The Seattle game in week 3, you have extra rest in front of and extra rest behind in order to get that game done. With LA, you have an extra day of rest to go from East Coast traveling to Buffalo and back. You do get an extra day of rest before playing the game, and that can at least help mitigate some of the the travel challenges as far as the interruption and being on the West Coast. That being a night game, that not being a 1 o'clock kick, for example, or a 4 o'clock kick, it kind of buys you a little bit of extra time. that back-to-back could very easily be a defining stretch of this season. I think the fourth quarter is going to define it. And there's no place you'd rather be with all the narratives around this team and closing late and not being able to get it done late in the season. I welcome what the fourth quarter is going to bring as far as clarity to this football team, because it seems like you look at the moves that this team has made this offseason, they have made some ideological shifts on defense. I think they are retooling how their ideology works on offense. Now, I think having another back in the mix in Jalen Wright, especially a bigger back, a more physical back, could be a very helpful addition to keeping all of your running backs healthy throughout the course of the season and fresher throughout the course of the season. But if somebody goes down, or if you have to pound the rock, you're no longer banking on 32-year-old Raheem Mostert and 190, 195-pound Devon Achane to do that. You've got a back that's got 20 pounds on Devon Achane that runs 4.3s. So that's going to be a very telling portion of the schedule, but we're not there yet, right? We just finished the finishing touches on at Buffalo, at LA Rams. That stretch, coming out of the bye, you get Indianapolis and Arizona. I think those are two easily winnable games, particularly with the extra rest in front of the road game against Indianapolis. I got pretty high expectations for the first quarter of the season. I have fairly high expectations for the first half of the second quarter. Well, that 1-2 punch of road games going into quarter three, which is 3 road games, Raiders, Patriots, and Jets, 3 home games, Raiders, Patriots, and Jets, and the road game here being short week in Green Bay on Thanksgiving. There's storylines of interest here. Christian Wilkins' return to Miami, getting that in the second half of the season. New England playing them week 12 versus playing them week 5. You get them at home a little later in the season, you might be getting a different quarterback. If Jacoby Brissett's the starter in week 5, is he still the starter in week 12? If he's not, I think that's a good thing for Miami to get 2 different flavored quarterback experiences against this defense that should only get better as the season goes on, especially if they defer to a rookie later in the year. The Green Bay Thanksgiving game should be a lot of popcorn. Green Bay historically has not had a lot of success defending the run. They made a defensive coordinator change with Jeff Hafley from Boston College this year, now being the defensive coordinator. That's a really interesting matchup for me. Now, it's the 8:20 kickoff on Thanksgiving. Okay, it's Lambeau. It's going to be probably chilly. It's on the road. It's a short week. It's a bad mix of variables. But I appreciate the fact that you're home for the 2 games in front of it, and then you get to come home to play the Jets for the first time on the back end of it. That's kind of where my mind goes as I reflect on that middle block of games. And I will say this too. You look at probably the final 6 games for Miami. Obviously there's that pivotal block of at Buffalo, at LA mid-season. You look at the Thursday night or the Thanksgiving Day onward has the potential to be a very challenging 6-game stretch. I've seen some of these other divisional opponents and AFC opponents, and their late season stretches in Buffalo and in New York with the Jets are no cakewalk either. There's going to be a lot of competition and a lot of good teams playing the AFC East opponents late in the year. So you have to take care of your business respectfully and make sure that the narrative around you playing the good teams, air quotes, changes this year. One thing that's nice, I don't see Baltimore on this list. One thing that's nice, I don't see Kansas City on this list. I will gladly take that every day of the week and twice on Sundays, and sometimes Thursdays and sometimes Mondays. Because you get 2 on Thursday, you get 2 on Monday, you get a bunch on Sunday, right? So that's kind of where through quarter 3 of the season, my frame of mind is for Miami. High expectations in quarter 1. Moderately high expectations in quarter 2. I have high expectations in quarter 3. Quarter 4. So when money meets the road, and this is where Miami last year had some closeout opportunities that they did not take advantage of. We're going to talk about if they do have the success that my expectation places on them earlier in the season, what these closeout opportunities could look like for Miami with a very tough stretch of games to bring you home to close the season. That is next here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us. The schedule is out, and now it's on you to make the decisions on what games you want to go to, when you want to go to them. Can you talk your family and letting you go to Green Bay for Thanksgiving? Probably not. It's not very likely, but you can try. Maybe it's a road trip for you. If it is, more power to you. It's not for me. So I won't be in Lambeau on Thanksgiving. But if you want to go to the game, Gametime is your ticket for your ticket. Gametime makes buying tickets for all of your favorite sporting events and local entertainment that much easier. You get zone deals. You get the view from your seat with your phone before you hit purchase. You get all-in pricing up front. There's no surprises when you put the tickets into your cart. And in just a few taps, you can get tickets delivered directly to your phone. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today for last-minute tickets with the lowest prices guaranteed. Quarter 4, weeks 15 through 18. At Houston, home against San Francisco, at Cleveland, Sunday Night Football, and at New York Jets. 3 road games to close. That is kind of where the math catches up to you. Houston, young team, high expectations, road game. At least it won't be particularly cold relative to any experiences that you're going to have in just a couple weeks. That should be a big challenge. That is an offense that has some parallels to the Mike McDaniel offense. So the good news is that defense should get plenty of reps against stylistically what they're trying to accomplish. And I'll say this too. Green Bay, New York, Houston, San Francisco, and I put Cleveland in that bucket too. Those are teams that if you told me you were going to draw them late in the year, I would say the silver lining is that there's an element of chance for health and availability that football, as Doug Doms, my high school coach, shout out Coach Doms, would always say, football is a game of attrition, right? And he used to say it in this big booming voice. He had the big beard. He goes, football is a game of attrition. And if you don't know Doug Doms, you don't appreciate that. And I'm pretty sure 98% of you don't. And that's okay. But that's the quote that echoes in my mind when I'm looking at Houston, week 15, San Francisco, week 16, coming across the country to play you at home. Who's on the injury list, right? And that's not been a list that's been kind to Miami in the past few years. But at the same time, they were also like rolling into week 17, losing Jalen Phillips, but kind of feeling okay. And then Bradley Chubb goes down. Or at least in week 15, you'd already lost Phillips, but you were getting Connor Williams back and you were knocking on the door and getting Robert Hunt back. And it felt like it was kind of going to come back together for you. There's attrition that takes place throughout the heart of the schedule. But who are the guys that are definitively out? And I think if you took San Francisco week 1 versus week 16, one thing I will guarantee is both rosters will be the best versions of themselves in week 1 because they're going to be totally healthy. But there's an element of chance that if you told me you got to play San Francisco or you got to go to Houston, well, I think those are 2 tough outs. I think those are 2 really challenging games for respective reasons. But the game tilts a little bit more, the odds tilt a little bit more in the name of chance that late in the season. Cleveland and Jets to finish. The Cleveland game, that's going to be a cold game. That's after Christmas, at Cleveland, night game. You want to run the ball. You want to show you're different, and you want to show you got it in you to run the football against a Jim Schwartz defense that wants to let their defensive line off the hook and they got these rangy linebackers, and they're going to play a lot of nickel with Greg Newsome on the field. That's your ticket. I think that's your opportunity to kind of hulk up and run the darn ball in that game. And look, the Dolphins couldn't do it last year in the playoff game, and I've already seen it from Green Bay fans with the announcement that was going to be a Thanksgiving game. Oh, good, it's going to be cold. They're going to stink. Okay, go ahead and brew up -30 and we'll talk, right? Like, I did not forget the late season performance the Dolphins put on in Buffalo the previous year, which they scored 29 points, and realistically, they should have won that game. They couldn't close. Kind of a theme, right? But if you told me that the theme and the narrative around the team was they couldn't close, and I'll say this for the team versus 2021 to 2022 and 2022 to 2023, some of the biggest narratives around the team get bucked in the offseason. Now, there's moving goalposts and sliding scale and things that get applied through different lenses. The narrative around the Dolphins based off the playoff game in Kansas City last year, I would like to think under different circumstances, that game doesn't look like that. I'm not saying the Dolphins win the game, right? The Chiefs went on to win the Super Bowl. They're the better team. They were comfortably the better team. But the cold created an extra layer, right? And I understand win a cold weather game before you talk and all that stuff. I get it. I understand it. But the trend of the team and their ability to address some of their biggest question marks year over year, and you've seen it happen 2 consecutive years for the Dolphins with offensively, and can Tua play at all? This offense is horrible. This offense can't run the ball. This offense got solved by Brandon Staley, right? Like, there are these incremental jumps that happen. And I'd like to think this, what appears to be tough quarter 4, is a nice opportunity for you to achieve that again. And that the trials and tribulations of the past 2 years in different ways has bred and prepped you to meet this moment in a way that you did not necessarily consistently meet the moment down the stretch last year. I'm not going to sit here and tell you the Dolphins are going to run the table the final 4 games. I would like to think I'm very grounded with you guys. But I look at this schedule, and I do see double-digit wins. That's my expectation has not changed in that regard. If I had to put a number, this is maybe a 6.5 or a 7 out of 10. There's some good breaks. The good breaks with both of the West Coast trips. You get some good breaks getting Buffalo out of the way early, getting New England out of the way early. You get some good breaks. And another storyline here, think about the Dolphins and their pass rush room, right? If you got to have Chubb or Phillips, they're not 100%, or they need a little bit of time to get their feet under them. Jacksonville's offensive tackle situation is Cam Robinson and Anton Harrison. It's not a world beater group. Buffalo's got a lot of good on their offensive line. Deion Dawkins, their best offensive lineman. That's a tough challenge. Seattle, Charles Cross, Abraham Lucas dealing with some injuries. That's a bit of a question. Tennessee had no tackles, has J.C. Latham starting at right tackle as a top 10 pick rookie in his 4th career game. Patriots have Caden Wallace switching from right tackle to left tackle to play against you in week 5, presumably, or Chukwuma Okorafor, who they got from Pittsburgh in free agency, who's never played 2 snaps of left tackle in his career in like 6 years. And then you get the bye. The offensive tackle groups that you will face before week 6 in the bye going into week 7 to kind of get you through into mid-October kind of buys you a little bit of time to play your young guys or to have another vet guy that could serve as a bridge. And hopefully those top of the depth chart guys can kind of work their way in. That's one of the big observations that I have about this group as well. But this team has 5 primetime games: Thursday night, week 2, Monday night, week 4, Monday night, week 10 in LA against the Rams. And then you have Green Bay on Thanksgiving. And then you finish at Cleveland. So you get 2 home primetime games there early in the season. Your final 3 on the road. It's a compliment to Miami and the direction of the franchise. And we'll have a lot of time between now and week 1 against Jacksonville to kind of process the direction that this team is continuing to go in this offseason. and we will evaluate them every step of the way. I'm sure we'll cook up a little bit more in the way of schedule content this week here on Locked On Dolphins, so plan accordingly. You can keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. I appreciate you guys checking out the show. Fins up. Go Dolphins. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I will be back to talk to you all again tomorrow.